Welcome back. The next company presenting is Safello with its CEO and co-founder Frank Schuil. Please go ahead, Frank.
Thank you. Yes, thanks for. My name is Frank Schuil, co-founder and CEO. I've been running Safello since 2013. We are registered as a cryptocurrency exchange in Sweden, Stockholm, under the registration of Finansinspektionen. Worth mentioning is that we also did a new registration in. Oh, okay. I hear my own sounds.
Is your YouTube up in the background running?
My apologies. Probably people have been staring at me like an idiot. Yes, you're totally right. My sincere apologies there. Yeah, small mistake. Okay, so resetting. So yeah, worth mentioning is that we also have registered in 2020 under the new AML5 directive, which is a much more stringent framework to be registered on under Finansinspektionen. Also worth mentioning is that we have been banked by a top 4 bank in Sweden since 2013. Which is really hard to obtain when you're a cryptocurrency business in this space. We have been profitable since mid-2019, and maybe the next slide to keep things moving along. So this is our team, or part of the team. We've grown quite a bit since. So as I mentioned, we've been profitable. We offer a simple and safe service for people to get onboarded into the cryptocurrency economy with Bank ID, with Swedish. Notable investors of ours are Northzone, obviously pretty well known in the Nordics, but also the internationally large cryptocurrency investment company, Digital Currency Group, as well as White Star Capital, that is a global investment firm. And notable partnerships that we have is Tink, the open platform, as well as the recently announced Klarna partnership, which we integrated with as well. Some of the metrics, if we go to the next slide. We have 180,000 users with our platform. We're just serving the Swedish market, even though we have historically a bit of experience in the international market. We've processed over 380,000 orders, and we're closing in on our first billion in trading volume. And if you look at the graphs, which we added here to give you the perspective, we really took off in a major way once we launched our new product in 2018, which is actually the combination of a very seamless widget integration on our website where people can purchase the cryptocurrency within 60 seconds, again mentioning Bank ID and the Swedish. And also can integrate that into their websites and applications. So we have, for instance, Opera, the web browser that has integrated this into their mobile web browser. We also have the largest information website, Bitcoin.se in Sweden, that have integrated it. And we have international cryptocurrency wallets like Edge Wallet and Mycelium Wallet that have integrated this as part of their onboarding flow. So we have been growing quite rapidly, and obviously we're on track to keep that trajectory going. Going to the next slide, which I know from if we can skip to the next slide. Yes, thank you. From understanding that there was already quite a bit of discussion today about cryptocurrency, but I think this slide hopefully adds some additional clarity to the cryptocurrency market. Institutional money has finally entered cryptocurrency in a big way, spearheaded by MicroStrategy, the hedge fund. It's worth noting that Digital Currency Group, which is our investors that have invested over 3 times now in Safello and led our pre-IPO, they are also the owner of the largest company that is holding institutional cryptocurrency. So they have over $20 billion in assets under management with that company that they are the holding owner of. If we look at the overall market, obviously it's been growing tremendously. Interestingly enough, of course, we know about the volatility in the market, and you can see that even with the snapshot, I was deciding whether we should leave it in or not, but I decided to leave it in just to showcase how quick the growth can be in crypto. So here at the time of the snapshot, the crypto market was a little bit over half a trillion, and now we've got obviously past the $1 trillion market cap already. And then worth mentioning is the large companies that are now coming from the fintech space that are entering the market, like PayPal and Square. And PayPal just acquired a custody solution as well for Curve for $200 million. So pretty big companies that are making significant bets on the future of this market. And I think we're only at the start of that. So that is the overall market. And then if we go to the next slide, diving into Safello's really core IP, we have over almost now 8 years of data. And when we founded the company, our whole objective is looking at the existing players in the market. How can we provide a safe and compliant platform? How can we do things by the book exemplified by our relationship with the bank that we've maintained all this time, with the registration not only in 2013 with FI when it was relatively easy to obtain it, but we also have the registration that we did in 2020 under the much stricter AML5 directive, GDPR compliance. And this was a time when we first founded the company that 80% of the volume went through a platform called MTGOX that was actually founded as a Magic the Gathering play card platform, and suddenly was doing $1 billion in trading volume, which obviously didn't scale and it collapsed ultimately. So we really set on the outset to do that differently, and the early actors in that space did not have the competence or deliberate setup to do so. And there's a lot that goes into this. So the liquidity side, we are connected with some of the largest, arguably the largest cryptocurrency company in the world that provides us with liquidity where we can scale seamlessly. And we also have backup liquidity providers in that setup. We work with the key platform in the world where we do the crypto forensic to look if there's any association with the dark market illicit activity. And in that regard, we also really closely work together with the Swedish ecosystem, the authorities, and even also on the regulatory side, where we're spearheading actually the implementation of the regulatory changes that may affect our industry and, of course, the fintech industry in a wider sense, where we're also chairing the blockchain work group from the Fintech Association. And we have been part with the Ministry of Finance to look at the implementations of the FATF regulation. So the platform itself, I think, is good to understand. A lot of that is data driven. Over time, we were able to collect data and use that data to analyze behaviors, which allows you in an asset that has no capability of chargebacks, like in the traditional financial system, to still be able to deliver something in. And that is really the key here. So on the one hand, people want their cryptocurrency really fast. On the other hand, you need to make sure that no nefarious activities can take place, or scams or hacks where we also have understanding of how those behaviors take place and how people are socially engineered. So it's a kind of a comprehensive platform where you need care of everything, and it's actually the data that drives ultimately how efficiently you can do that. And we are doing that at a speed of 60 seconds delivery. So this back office then feeds to a front end, if you go to the next slide, where we can take this to the widget that I mentioned, which is literally 2 lines of code. It's on our own website, so you can go to safello.com to try that out. On the partner website, like what I mentioned with Bitcoin.az, it can be served on the web in a logged-in experience where you log in with Bank ID, which is more like your traditional banking experience. And it can be in a mobile application as well. you could go to the iOS App Store or the Android Google Play Store and download the application, and you'll get the same experience. So if we then go to the next slide to zoom in on what that user's experience looks like, this goes into the design philosophy of taking something that is inherently complex and bringing it down to a level of simplicity that an average user can go through it. And the way we like to describe that flow is that if you look at a fintech, if you look at a regular startup, there is a level of complexity of making a startup with the technology work. If you then look at a fintech startup, typically it's more capital intense because of the licensing structure. And with a cryptocurrency, there is this another level of complexity with the underlying crypto transactions and the irreversibility of those transactions. So to do that, to bring that down to a simple user experience is really the hard part. And to illustrate that, if you look at the bottom side with the screens, you see all the types of actions that need to be performed in that 60-second experience. Actually 30 seconds if when you do Bankity and Swish. So it's 30 seconds. You can try that out, and you can tell us if it doesn't, if you don't manage in 30 seconds. And all these things need to take place in order to make sure that 98% approximately can go through automatically. But with those other 2% of the transactions, that we can do all the way to very extended due diligence on that customer to avoid nefarious activities and be able to comply to AML network. And this view of design and how we deliver that is the philosophy, how we build our products, and what has been the cornerstone of our successful roll-up and the growth that you saw in the first graphs on for the third slide. So if we go to the next slide. We have extended that to the selling process, where we've also automated that in the same simple way, and we've extended that to other products. We've done that with Safello Premium, Safello Mobile that I mentioned, and in this screenshot, we in December launched a product called Safello Business. So with Safello Premium, we are targeting higher net worth individuals that have more to spend, that obviously want more attractive fees, but we also want more support in making these larger transactions. And with Business, we are actually helping businesses to purchase cryptocurrency and sell cryptocurrency for instance, their balance sheet, which is a more up and coming trend, spearheaded again by the activities that are taking place predominantly in the United States with hedge funds like MicroStrategy that buy for billions of dollars into this cryptocurrency market. And as part of the process that we're heading into with our IPO, I can disclose that we are including in that the development of a wallet. We have deliberately steered away from the wallet up until now to not be actually a target and be exposed to an excessive balance sheet that can be hacked, which is predominantly all the things that you see in the headlines of exchanges being hacked and funds being lost. However, there is certainly now a need for us to be able to offer that, as well as the maturity in the market is there to be able to reliably offer that as well. So that is the main thing that we're looking ahead with delivering, as well as a subscription service where people can do repeat purchases, where it actually acts as a savings account where every month or every quarter you could save a bit of cryptocurrency. So moving on to the next slide. Our business model is actually a transactional model today on simple the buy and sell price and the spread that we have between that. For the widget partners, we actually have a revenue share model. So all our partners, they generate a revenue from that. And then we have a fee depending on which model and which payment method is being used by the end customer. And in the models that we see in the future, we're also looking at the subscription-based model, which obviously be a set monthly recurring model, as well as that we see great opportunity in the future for an interest-based business model. So moving ahead to the next slide then, I think it's worth noting that not only are we like mentally ready for expansion, we actually have the partners and integration in place to do this. Just a collection of the partners that we have in place and integrated with. For instance, Klarna has access to most European banks. And what's worth noting there is that we actually have the experience historically as well. So we've been in the UK. We were in the Barclays Texas Accelerator, where we did a commercial deal with Barclays, and we were operational there. And we've taken all of the experience to ultimately say, okay, to penetrate a market deeply, which is part of our unique selling point, we need to be hyper local. And that's what we did in that graph that you saw in 2018 in Sweden, and the results you obviously saw in that graph, and that represents 100% of our volume today. But with that, we feel very confident about the playbook of rolling this out to a wider European market. So that the next slide, please. In terms of our team, we have a broad competence from the cryptocurrency market, but also the traditional financial market. Very briefly, our CFO that recently joined have a background, Stockholm School of Economics, Goldman Sachs. We have the head of compliance, David Söderberg, actually came from a competing company, Gubit before, has worked as a paralegal there, have extensive experience with cryptocurrency. Michael Gromack, he has a background from Rocket Internet and has been working a lot in the high scaling technology businesses. Nicholas was working in Silicon Valley with development there and has been heading our product. He's been at the cornerstone of our development. Of course, my co-founder Joachim as an architect, a long history in crypto. And on the board, we have the representative. I'll start with Sepp there, who is the partner at White Star Capital that has now launched a digital asset fund. I can announce here today that they also will be co-leading the IPO together with Northzone. Wendy is an observer on the board today, and with Digital Currency Group. And then we have our chairman, who has a long history on publicly traded companies, lived in Silicon Valley for several decades, and has obviously a great experience in crypto from being with us since the very early days. So that is what we have today. We're growing our team fairly rapidly. We've seen this tremendous growth, and we're following through with the hires on our end to be able to keep up with the growth that we're seeing, as well as to make sure that we have the competences needed for the public markets, which we will follow with a separate announcement on that. So then moving to the next slide. The ownership structure, as I mentioned, the three venture capital firms as key investors. Personally, through my entity, I am the largest shareholder, together with my co-founder, Joachim Johansson. Interesting on the structure here on the left side is that we have a very clean holding structure with a separate entity that holds the IP, and a separate operating entity that is the entity that received the registration with Finansinspektionen in 2020. Moving to I think the last slide. The actual IPO round. So it's worth mentioning that the pre-IPO that is stated here was very successful, was 5 times oversubscribed by only existing investors. So unfortunately, we have a financial advisor, Kupura, and unfortunately, the new investors could not participate. And now we are heading to the IPO. So that was in December. We have now already filed with Nasdaq for the actual initial public offering that is planned to take place in Q2. The objectives are broadening of the product and the market in Sweden, obviously expanding the team and focusing on generally expanding across the board and working on that internationalization with the things that we have in place, as well as having a reserve for the liquidity and the growth there, even though we have a setup where we actually have a really unique setup with liquidity providers where we don't need to use a lot of operational capital for the liquidity, which is a really hard problem for many cryptocurrency exchanges to solve as they scale the business. So that is a brief highlight, and I guess I'm probably out of time by now. I lost a minute or so there with staring blank into the screen. Next slide or last slide. where we can be reached. We have an IR page where you can read up more. Obviously, we try to get ahead of our MAR regulations. We already disclosed the annual report there from 2019. Our AGM is upcoming the 12th of March, after which we will release the annual reports of 2020, where obviously you can dig into the figures. And if you have any questions, then we have ir@safello.com, where our team will respond, including myself. Thank you.
Thank you for that interesting presentation, Frank. And now it's time for the Q&A.
All right.
And the first question is, what kind of risk do you associate with cryptocurrency in general, and how can this risk affect Safello?
I felt like you asked the question to the previous speaker as well, and there are of course risk associated with cryptocurrencies towards the end user, of course, in many regards, where people don't know what they're doing. So it starts with education, I think, for the end user, to make sure that we help them understand what is a good cryptocurrency, what is some good platform, how do you recognize a safe platform to interact with. Their risk, of course, with, from a technical point of view and how you deal with the security, that goes without saying, and it is of course a fundamental part of our company and how we built the business to protect the procedures on how we handle cryptocurrency and how we handle money. That goes almost without saying, but it's an extra point of attention. So I think it's for us, it's very much on the one end, our mission is to provide the financial freedom for people to make their investments the way they want to make their investments, but also have a level of protection to make sure that our customers are not being scammed or are losing money or are being socially engineered. And we go pretty far to make sure that that doesn't happen. Where we have any sense of that somebody might be socially engineered, we want to make sure that they don't actually fall in that trap. So we, in the same end, we were part of taking down the largest dark market, for instance, and together with the police, and we helped the police with the investigation. So both to make sure that the reputation of cryptocurrency, which in reality, if you look at the actual percentage of nefarious activity by the report of change analysis, is only 0.34%. So it's not in relation to the actual criminal activity or nefarious activity, how people perceive it. And we want to make sure that people understand that and help them also to prevent them from making those mistakes.
Very good. Thank you for that answer. And the next question is, the risk of trading cryptocurrencies are mainly related to its volatility. Would you say that this volatility would affect Safello's business model?
So the interesting thing, if you look at our growth numbers, which I think is one of the key things when I look at investments myself, is like, how quick is the company growing? Have they been able to do that in a profitable way, which we have since 2019? We've outgrown the market as such, and the volatility that goes along with it. Looking at a longer adoption timeline, which is a healthy way to look at it. We're looking at the creation of something as big as the internet, and it goes in wave and it goes in volatile waves, just like the internet bubble was there in 2000. We are seeing these kind of bursts and bubbles, but it's the trend line of the overall growth, which obviously has been very rapid over the past 10 years as the best performing asset. That is sort of the underlying factor for us, as well as as an exchange, we make, of course, money up and down. Volatility in that sense is our lifeblood. And the final point there is that if you go back to the business model slide, we are looking at business model that takes some of that volatility related business risk away by introducing a recurring model and looking at an interest-based model, which disconnects from that purely transactional volatility related to model. Sorry. Yeah.
Interesting. And the last question is, do you foresee any more partnerships with other key players like Klarna? And if so, do you find them in Sweden or abroad?
So, I mean, we generally are an international company. We've always been, as per our international investment base, our international exposure. So there's tremendous value in the great, if you look at Klarna, for instance, the partnership for us, that is not a local partnership, that is a partnership with a company that happens to have its headquarters here, but obviously Klarna is a global company. So I think we are looking at partnerships that help us scale, that help us get to markets where we want to be, that gets us products into the market that we want to launch and go to market quicker. So of course we foresee partnerships. That goes without saying, and also expanding with existing partners that we have an existing working relationship with.
Okay, thank you very much, Frank, for the good answers, and we appreciate having you here today, and good luck in the future.
Yeah, thank you.
Och vi är strax tillbaka i helt vanlig ordning om några minuter.